the Knitted by Whitney YouTube channel. I'm back with episode 2 of my Stash Tour series. If you missed the first episode, I am doing Stash Tour videos to celebrate reaching 5,000 subscribers, and I'm making more than one because the first time I tried to record doing all of my stash in one video, it was overwhelming. So I decided to break my stash down into 5 categories. And today you're watching the second video, which is hand-dyed yarn, lights and brights. I have all of my yarn sitting next to me, and I'm excited to show you these because these are all really fun colors. I have a variety of dyers, but you'll notice when I get to it, there's one dyer that I have quite a few of their bright colors. Let's see if you can guess who it is before I get there. Now, just to remind you, if you haven't watched the first video, I am going to be sharing all of the information that I have about the yarn and any plans that I intend to make with the yarn. If I have a pattern in mind, I'm going to put it right here on the screen. And if I have any fun stories to share, I'm going to tell those as well. I don't have a particular order of the yarns that I'm going to show you. I've kind of started with the earliest hand-dyed yarns that I have because I do know which ones are some of the earliest that I bought, and they're very, very special to me. And no, I haven't made anything with them yet, but I do know what I want to make with them, and that's what counts. So let me dive into this section of my yarn stash. The first one I would like to show you is from the first hand-dyed yarn company that I ever learned about, and that is Hedgehog Fibers. This is a single skein of their sock yarn. I don't have the label. This was gifted to me by my aunt, and she gifted it to me very recently, but I do have other Hedgehog Fibers yarn in my stash that's older. But I wanted to just show off this one skein first before I move on to the next one because it feeds into the following dyer. I have a method to my madness, I promise. But this one is her sock base in the color Monet, and it does look a little scraggly just right here at the end, so I do apologize for that. But this is a gorgeous blend of light blue with dark blue, hot pink, and brown speckles. And I think this one is so gorgeous. My aunt gifted this to me because she was making a Musselburgh hat when I was over at her house that time, and I expressed interest in trying out that pattern myself. I know it is the most popular pattern on Ravelry the last time I checked, and for good reason. It's a really cool pattern. I do intend to make one. I just haven't done it yet, but this is the yarn that I'm going to use to make a Musselburgh. These next yarns are some of the most precious yarn in my stash. The most precious yarn I have talked about in a podcast episode and have featured it on my stash spotlight, but that yarn is currently in a project, so it doesn't count towards the stash. That's why I'm not talking about it in my stash series. I've been a knitter for almost 10 years, and probably about 6 months to a year into learning how to knit, I saw some hand-dyed yarn on Pinterest, and this was the first time that I had ever seen hand-dyed yarn, and I fell in love with the color immediately. It was Fly, which is one of the colors by Hedgehog Fibers. This is my introduction to hand-dyed yarn, and as you'll be able to tell from this stash video and from the other stash video that I'm going to do of my other hand-dyed yarn that's more moody colors, I have fallen in love with hand-dyed yarn. I do know it's not for everybody. A lot of people don't like the variation to the yarn. They want to have something that is a solid color or that is reliable in the dye process, so they know that they're going to get very color correct skeins, versus because hand-dyed yarn is made by hand, there can be some anomalies, there can be some little individual aspects to them that makes it unique. And to me, I love that aspect about hand-dyed yarn. And this particular hand-dyed yarn, it's one of my favorite colors that I have ever seen, and I just think it's so beautiful. And I found this yarn, I have to tell you this story because this is such a cute story. I mentioned in the first video that my parents are snowbirds and they go down to Florida for a couple of months of the year, and the first time that I visited them in their place down there, I found that there was a yarn store maybe a 20-minute drive away. It's Florida. Everything is at least a 10 to 20-minute drive away. But there was this yarn store that no longer exists. It's called Needlefish Yarns of Venice, and it was just this little hole-in-the-wall yarn store. And I went inside, and the first thing that stood out to me was this yarn hanging on the wall. And I freaked out. I was so excited because to me, this yarn didn't really exist in real life for me yet. I had only seen pictures on Pinterest. Now I knew that Hedgehog Fibers was a very special company that at the time, I don't know if it's the same way now, but at the time they were only stocked by yarn stores. They didn't have an online shop at the time, and they only allowed one supplier within an area. So, for example, where I live in Nova Scotia, one yarn store in Nova Scotia stocks Hedgehog Fibers. And it is still like that now, but I don't know if that is because there's only allowed to be one stockist in a small area, or if only that one store chooses to stock Hedgehog Fibers. So don't quote me on that. But this was the first time that I had seen Hedgehog Fibers yarn in person. And it was the color that I had first seen on Pinterest. Now, the funny thing about Hedgehog Fibers and hand-dyed yarn in general, but this is something that I find unique to Hedgehog Fibers, all of their colorways have two variations because of how they're dyed. I don't know if it's the same batches that are done in different steps, or if it's different people doing the same color batch but in different ways. And I notice it particularly with fly because I have seen two separate variations of fly. There's this one, which is a very minty neon green, and then there is one that is a very limey neon green. And if I can find a photo, I'll put it here on the screen so you can see the difference between this really minty one and that limey one. So when I went into this store, I knew as a plus size person, I was already a plus size person, that I needed quite a large yardage for a sweater. And 3 skeins is barely enough for a sweater for me. This is sock weight, by the way. And at the time, I just thought, I'm going to get whatever she has and I'll make whatever I can with it. I don't care if it sits in my stash for years. Eventually, I'll find the right pattern for it. I have found the right pattern for it, which I'll get to in a minute. But she only had 3 that were this minty green color. She did have a few more that were the limey green color, but this was the one that I saw the photo of online that I fell in love with. So this was the one that I wanted. And this has sat in my stash, I'm not gonna lie, for probably 8 years, I wanna say. And I finally found the right pattern for it. This is the Lizzie sweater by Sosu Knits. And you'll notice there is a contrasting color that is used in that pattern because it is a brioche yoke sweater. Well, this is my contrasting color. I know, this is pretty wild, these colors together, but to me, they blend so beautifully. Green and purple are opposite colors on the color wheel, so they always look really cool together. But you'll notice that these are very similar in tone. So this is a very bright, warm, neon-y color. Same with this one. It's a very warm green. It's not like a really cool tone green. Well, there's specks of blue, so there is some cool tone to it. But they look very cohesive. That's the word I'm looking for. And I just love how the purple pops against the green. And I think it's going to look so good in that brioche yoked sweater. So these are some of my really, really special yarns. And this purple is from a company that no longer dyes yarn. It is We Love Knitting, which is based out of Australia. I think the color is 1963 because that's what's written on the card. But this one is just extra fine merino, and this is another sock weight base. It works really, really well with the Hedgehog Fibers for strand thickness, and I'm really excited to make that sweater. It's just because it is a really intricate brioche sweater, it's one that I keep pushing off and pushing off. Eventually I will have the guts to do it, but it's one that I want to make sure that I get right, and I'm okay waiting until I feel ready to tackle that sweater. I have one more Hedgehog fiber color to show you, which I got at that same store in Florida. This is Pinky Swear, which to me is one of the most iconic Hedgehog fiber colors. When I first got into knitting and I first learned about hand-dyed yarn, Hedgehog Fibers was one of the few companies doing really bold neon colors, at least within the spheres that I was in for knitting and for seeing different yarn companies and yarn dyers and stuff. But, you know, looking at this today, especially after the Barbie movie came out, I'd say almost every single hand dyer has a color that looks similar to this, or features one of the bright colors in this skein. Because everyone did a hot pink after Barbie, which is fine. It's a really popular color. Everyone wants to do something really fun and get inspiration from pop culture. So totally fine that there's lots of hot pinks out there. I have some more hot pink yarn to share once we get to some of the other dyers on my assortment right here. But this is Pinky Swear, and I used some of this already. This is wound double, but this is their sock base. I wound it up double because I used it for, I used some of it for my friend's emotional support chicken that I made earlier this year. And I still have plenty of it left, but I know I want to make a cute little scarf with it. I think this would just be a really fun pop of color, and I think it would just be really joyful to work on. Because, let's be honest, this is a really awesome color. So vibrant and so lively, and I just think this would look really cool done up in one of those small scarves. And I love neon colors, but I don't always want to wear a neon sweater. I certainly do with the fly yarn, but this one I don't think I would want as a whole sweater, so I'm happy to just use it for a little accessory. These yarns will be a little tricky to show because I can't quite remember the order that they go in, but they are a fade kit from We Love Knitting. And they go from this pale pink down to this really pale blue. And I found We Love Knitting kind of by accident on Instagram, and then I did eventually purchase from them. I only made one purchase because coming from Australia, it was quite a lot of postage and there was a bit of duty, and I was kind of overwhelmed by how expensive it ended up being. And they no longer dye yarn anyway, so I can't buy from them anymore anyway. But I remember I would see all of these gorgeous colors on their Instagram, and nowadays I know how to describe them because it's a more popular color scheme for dyers to use, but at the time I didn't really know what to call it. But these are pastel neons or neon pastels, and to me, they were just so gorgeous and they looked so pretty. And this one came in a fade kit that I think it was called the Best Friend Fade. That seems to come out in my mind as what it was called. Could be totally wrong. But I loved it because it blended so nicely. Actually, now that I think about it, I think it was only a 3-color fade, and I bought an extra one because I knew as a plus-size person I wouldn't be able to get a sweater out of 3. So I purchased a 4th. And I just loved how seamlessly they go together. Like, other than maybe the pink, I probably wouldn't even bother striping the other ones to blend them from one into the other because they're so similar. But these, you'll notice 2 of them are already caked up. This one's actually kind of messy because I'm holding it backwards because I do have a little swatch here. I'm going to put these down for a second. I want to make the Turtle Poof by Hedgehog Fibers for this yarn, and I did do a little swatch with it. So the Turtle Poof is actually made using Hedgehog Fibers alpaca lace, and although that is thinner than this fingering, because that is a very fluffy, very poofy yarn, you can get a larger gauge out of it. And I learned from doing my gauge swatch with this, I cannot get gauge with this by itself. Otherwise, it's just way too see-through, and I'm not a fan of that. It does look so beautiful knitted up. This is one of those variegated colors that is very busy, so you don't have a lot of color pooling. And with this one, what I've decided to do is I'm going to hold a strand of Aloft mohair from Knit Picks, just their plain white base, and it will just further kind of soften these beautiful neon pastels, and it'll make what I think is going to be basically a Lover inspired sweater, because the colors look so similar to the cover art for Lover by Taylor Swift. Obviously you knew that. But I just think that these would make such a beautiful fade. Starting with the pink, I think I would like the pink closest to my face and end with the blue at the bottom. But I just think that's going to be such a fun sweater. And I have one yarn left from We Love Knitting. This one is also their extra fine merino fingering weight base. And it is called, it's a Norwegian phrase, it's called Eiskadei. And I do think that that meant best friend or close friend or something like that. And it's just this really fun stripy yarn. It is like an actual long twisted skein, but I ended up just closing it up like this, and I think it's really cute, so I've left it like that. I tried to give this away in my 1K giveaway video last year or the year before. It must have been just last year. And the person that I chose for the giveaway never contacted me, so I just hung on to the yarn. I still have a little stitch marker attached to it that I was going to give away with it, but they never contacted me, so I decided to just keep the yarn. And I have no idea what I'm going to do with this one, so it just sits in the stash because it's really pretty, and one day I think an idea will pop into my head, but until then, it just sits there and it's happy there. Okay, the next one that I want to talk about is in this big flamingo bag, which I made. This was something that I learned how to make when I first got into sewing, I think 2 years ago. I'm still a very beginner sewer, but this was there's a free option, and then I paid for the expansion pack kit to make knitting bags or project bags. Actually, like, the bags were in many different sizes, but they only have one size that is part of the free sewing pattern. That's the word I'm looking for. But it's just these really fun drawstring bags, and I've been using them for a long time. I use them more for storage now because I do prefer a firmer fabric for my knitting bags, just to like keep things nice and protected. This is just 2-layer cotton. There's cotton on the outside, cotton on the inside. I did this really fun pattern on the inside, just some scrap fabric that my aunt gave me. And yeah, it's really great just to store some stuff. But in here, I have a couple of different yarns. Looking at them, they look all tangled, but hopefully I can pull out. I thought I had a swatch. Oh, I do have a swatch in here. Yes. Okay, good. I have a swatch that I can show you, and then I'll show you the yarns. Here is my swatch, and I forget what this pattern was for. It was a striped pattern on a small needle. So this one has 4 brightly colored yarns. You've seen one of them already because I showed it off in my Local to Me Yarns video, because I'm using it in a project with one of those local yarns. This is Knit Picks Capretta in a neon yellow, highlighter yellow. This yarn is all kind of tangled, so please don't judge me for that. It's been sitting in here for a couple years. Then I have the blue yarn is this one, which is Hedgehog Fibers. This is their cashmere base, I think. It came in a kit. I bought a fade kit from them, but there was like a couple of different yarn bases. One of them was this color on their mohair. So the color is called Deep End. So I have it on mohair, and I'm using it with a yarn from my previous video to make a shawl. And it also came on this cashmere base, and then it also came on their either sock base or merino slim, which is their single ply yarn, and I used that in a project a couple of years ago. But like, I still had this one ball hanging around, didn't really know what to do with it. It's only about 300 and something yards, so like not very much to play with, but I thought if it's a contrasting color for stripes, well then I'll make it the last stripe, so I'll have the fewest stripes of this one, so if I run out of this yarn before the others, it's okay. So there's that one. The pink one is This is a local yarn, actually. I forgot to show it in my local yarns video. That's okay. Some of the yarns go through a few different... Some of the yarns can fit in more than one category. This is very tangled. But this one is a New Brunswick dyer called Sweet Skein of Mine. And I forget the name of this color. I might have the tag in this bag. If I don't quite know what the color is. But I think it was something to do with Valentine's Day, like sweethearts or something. I got this in a stash swap. So a couple of years ago, I used to be in a local knitting group that has since kind of like grown apart. But one year for Christmas, we all brought a skein of yarn, and then we did a Yankee swap of picking numbers and then switching out skeins, and they were all wrapped up in bags. And someone had already opened this one, but I really wanted it. So when my number came up, I was one of the last people. So I was able to nab this skein, and I was so happy because I loved this one. And so this is my third color. And then my fourth color, the orange, I have some fun things to share about that one. That's this yarn here. So this yarn started its life as bare yarn. I mean, obviously all yarn starts its life as bare yarn. Starts its life as a sheep, really. Oh my gosh, look at that tangle. Don't look at that tangle. But I bought this as bare yarn. This used to be stocked by Michaels. It is Lion brand Sock Ease, I think, and it's a fingering weight sock yarn. It's a very, very fuzzy sock yarn, bordering on rustic, but it's not rustic. It's pretty soft. And I dyed this using an Easter egg kit. So if you are not watching, oh my gosh, what's her YouTube channel name? Chem Dyes? Oh my gosh, I'm blanking. Her name's Rebecca, but she is a scientist who dyes yarn, and she got her channel started quite a few years ago. She's quite big now. I don't think she works as a scientist anymore. I think she does dyeing full time, but she had all of these video series about experimenting with different ways of dyeing yarn, and she did one with Easter egg tablets, and it looked so much fun. So I went and bought some plain yarn, bought an Easter egg dyeing kit, and I chose to use the red, the orange, and the yellow. And my original hope was that I would get a skein that like was those different colors across the skein. But I think I had a lot of water in my pot, or maybe my water was too warm. But instead of the colors adhering separately, they kind of blended together with just a little bit of the red kind of taking on its own. And Rebecca will tell you in the videos that that is a scientific thing. It's a chemical reaction that red dye can adhere faster than other colors. I don't know why, but she knows why. She talked about it in the video, I think. Anyway, I created this gorgeous color, and as I was skeining it up, I realized, oh my gosh, this looks like Calcifer from Howl's Moving Castle, which is one of my favorite books, also one of my favorite movies. And to me, this is just my Calcifer yarn. So it's a one-off. I will never get a yarn like this again because it was a particular scenario where I dyed this yarn. And it kind of sat in my stash for a while. I knew I wanted to do something with it, but didn't quite know what. And then one day I had the brilliant idea of taking these separate skeins that had all been living in my stash and not knowing what to do with, and realizing those are actually a really cohesive palette. I really love them together. So I did them up in a swatch, and I actually love this swatch. So I decided to just use a plain gray yarn. This is Sandnes Garn. Where's one with a label? There we go. Sandnes Garn Sisu, which is just their sock weight yarn. And oh gosh, the yarn color is probably not on here. 1032. They're light pearly gray. And I thought this was a beautiful background. I bought this for myself for my birthday when I turned 31, so 3 years ago. And I got it from a yarn store that's no longer around. It was one of my favorite local yarn stores, but it's gone now. But that was my birthday present to myself, was I bought that yarn. And I love it like this. I was planning on using it by itself, and it would have been a beautiful gray sweater, because I think at the time I was going to use it to make a sweater to replace a store-bought sweater that I had that was the same color. But then I striped it, and like, long story short, the stripes were happening. Like, this is going to be so much fun. Hi everyone, Editing Whitney here. I totally blanked when I was talking about this yarn, about what project I was going to make. I am not making a striped sweater with this yarn. I am making the Autumn Court sweater by Dragon Horde Designs. And I just love all of the different ways that the colors are used on the yoke. I just think that particular design would look so fun in a bunch of bright neon yarns, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to use all 4 of the colors that I showed, but if not, I can't remember if it uses 4 colors or 5. If it uses 5, I'm going to use some mohair that I'm going to show later on in this video that is a bright vibrant purple, but if it only uses 4 colors, then I'm going to use the 4 that I showed. But I just wanted to pop in and tell you that that's the pattern that I'm actually going to make with this yarn. These next yarns I bought after I already chose the pattern that I wanted to make. These, once I get them out of the bag, there we go. These are Trailhead yarns, and this is their Cabot Trail base, which, if you're not familiar with Nova Scotia geography, the Cabot Trail is a section up in Cape Breton, so my home province. And these are 100% Tencel. Now, I used 2 of these in the color Unfortunate Bridesmaid to make my pale blue souffle tee that I knit for my wedding shower, and I love that. It's so pretty. But there were some drawbacks to using this particular yarn for that particular pattern. So yes, I am going to use this yarn to make that pattern again, only I want to make a long sleeve souffle pattern. But to fix some of the issues that I had with the blue one, I'm going to be holding some very messy mohair. This matching pink mohair. So this is by Sugar Bush Yarns. This is their drizzle base. Sadly, Sugar Bush Yarns no longer is in existence, so this, you cannot find this anymore. Oh, here's a neater ball. There we go. That looks a lot neater than the one that I showed you. But it's just this beautiful pale pink, and I feel like it goes so well with the Trailhead yarns. So the Trailhead yarns does have some color variation in it. This one is called Unicorn Tears, but I think that they really complement each other well, and I'm going to use them together to make the souffle long sleeve. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use just mohair for the single strand section of the neck, because what I found is that Tencel, because it has no memory, will just drape really low, which is fine if that's what you would like. But the souffle pattern was designed using mohair, so a yarn that has structure and that has memory and that will hold its shape. So when I made my blue version, the ruffle, instead of coming across the top of my chest up here, it crosses my chest way down here, which it means I have to keep pulling up the shirt. And I love it. I love the color. I will never get rid of it. I just know moving forward, I will not use a plant-based fiber for a pattern that is designed using an animal fiber, because you get a different look. But I do want to make a long sleeve version. This is going to replace a store-bought blouse that I have that is very similar in style to the souffle, and I would love to have a hand knit version instead. These next 2 yarns are yarns that I bought on a trip that I took to Portland, Oregon in 2019. It was my second solo trip that I'd ever taken, and my first one that I did was to Iceland, and I loved it. It was so wonderful. I loved seeing Iceland. Being there by myself was kind of sad, but that's okay. It just wasn't a very social country, so I found that I was very lonely there. So the next time I took a solo trip, I decided to go somewhere where I had a friend. I flew to Portland, Oregon, spent a couple of days there, and then I took the bus up to Vancouver, BC, where I had a friend that was living. I used to live in Vancouver, so I was able to stay with my friend and have a lovely social visit. Got to see some of my other friends that still lived in Vancouver, so kind of the total opposite to my trip to Iceland. I do want to go back to Iceland with my husband, though, because I know he would love it, and I would get to do more exploration because we could take more time to go there. But I bought a couple of yarns when I went to Portland. I knew I would be visiting a couple of really cool yarn stores. Portland does what's called the Rose City Yarn Crawl, because Portland is known as the Rose City, and I was not there during that time, but I learned about it afterwards. However, there were 3 amazing yarn stores that I went to visit. Well, 2 amazing ones, one okay one. Sadly, one of the amazing ones has since closed down, which is sad, but that's okay. One of the really amazing ones is still there. That was Starlight Knitting Society. The skein of yarn that I got from them is currently in a project, so it's not part of the stash video, but I have 2 skeins of yarn that are from the other 2 stores. So, second store I went to, which I don't remember the name of because it was the one that was kind of okay. This is Knitted Wit Pixie Ply. This is a merino nylon stellina base, so it has some really fun sparkle. If you can't tell by the colors, it is Harry Potter inspired. It's the Battle of Hogwarts. And every time I show something like this, I do like to preface the fact that I no longer support J.K. Rowling. I believe in trans rights, and I vehemently disagree with J.K. Rowling's opinions. So I no longer support her. I bought this before she decided to share her vitriol publicly. But that's probably why I haven't used this yarn, because I feel kind of icky about the fact that it's a Harry Potter inspired yarn. However, I have since learned, since I talked about this another time, that Knitted Wit has rebranded all of their Harry Potter colors to have different non-Harry Potter names, which is amazing. Such a great choice from a yarn brand. Battle of Hogwarts, I don't think didn't get one, because I did reach out to them and ask them, and I don't think this one got a rebrand. I think this one just didn't get dyed anymore. So it's not really available anymore either. I don't quite know what to do with it, because this is one of those yarns that looks beautiful in the skein, but I don't know if I would like it knitted up. I've seen a couple projects with it, and one of them was a pair of fingerless gloves, and they looked really nice. So I think I'm going to make a pair of gloves with this, because it's also a bit rough and scratchy because of the stellina, so I don't really want it around my neck, and like, I'm not a sock knitter, but if I was to ever make a pair of socks, I don't think I would want this on my feet either. So I'm thinking hands are the way to go. And also, because the colors are kind of dark and muddy, that's going to be great for your hands, which can get dirty when you're wearing gloves, just from basic wear and tear, holding the steering wheel of the car or picking things up from the ground, that type of thing. So I think this would be fine as a pair of gloves, but just haven't gotten around to it. It's one that I think I'll have to just ignore that it's Harry Potter based in order to use it. But that was from the second yarn store that I went to. It wasn't my favorite of the yarn stores that I went to. It was in an industrial area, and it was kind of challenging to get to. In fact, I think it was on like the backside of a Home Depot or something like that. And it was just really difficult to find, and it was kind of treacherous walking around there as a pedestrian versus like going in a car. So I think if you had a car, it'd be fine, but I was going around on buses and walking. And then the third yarn store that I went to, which is no longer in operation, and I don't even remember the name of it, but it was such a cute little store, I picked up this skein of yarn. And this is another one that I love it in the skein, and I don't know if I would love it as a knitted piece. However, if I was to knit this, I would definitely hold it double, because this is quite a thin fingering weight yarn. I don't know if I can't read the yardage, it's kind of covered up, but this is by Black Elephant Yarns, and the color is called Rainbow in Blighty, which I have learned is a slang term for England. So I think this is such a fun colorway with all of these bright colors and then the very rainy day gray. So I would probably hold this yarn double so that I wouldn't get so much pooling of the bright colors at one end and then the gray at another end. I think I would get more of a spread out color with holding it double so that the pink and the blue and the purple would be spread out amongst the gray a bit better. But this one, I don't really know what I want to make with. Maybe a little scarf, maybe a hat. I toyed with the idea of like a muscle burra or something like that, but I want to try making the muscle burra with the Hedgehog Fibers yarn first because I want to see if I enjoy making it before I dedicate a bunch of my yarn to making those hats. My next yarn was a Christmas gift to me from my mom this year. It is Spun Right Round. This is their classic sock base in the color Lights Out. And this is not the first time that I have had this yarn. I first bought a single DK skein at one of those yarn stores in Portland. I think I got it at the one that has since closed down. And I knitted a hat with it. And I just love it so much. It's one of my favorite purple yarns that I think I've ever seen. Because it's a blend of pale purple, neon purple, hot pink, really dark bluey purple. And it's so gorgeous. I love it. So when my mom was asking me what I wanted for Christmas, got interrupted by someone at the door. I live in an area where people rarely come to the door, so it was someone trying to sell us a different phone company. Anyway, my mom bought this for me for Christmas, and I had asked her for it for Christmas because she knows that I have a large yarn stash, but she will agree to buy me yarn once a year for either Christmas or my birthday because she doesn't like to feed the stash. And she thinks that I use my yarn, which I do. I do use my yarn. I just happen to have a large stash. But I asked for this one because I loved it so much as a hat. I thought I'm going to get it to make a sweater. I originally thought I would make a cardigan with this. But after using, which yarn did I use? I'm using a yarn right now, which I'm blanking on. Oh, yes. I'm using some Hedgehog Fibers yarn held double to make the 03 ribbed cami right now, which I'm really enjoying. I might be done it by the time this video comes out because I'm recording these far in advance. But I thought to myself, this would be another one that would be really fun with the yarn held double to make a tank top. This one I probably wouldn't do a ribbed tank top. I would probably do a stockinette tank top. Maybe another Pillars tank top. That seems to be my favorite one lately. So that's what these will become. I think also holding the yarn double is going to prevent some pooling because I do notice looking at them that this one in particular has this big chunk of white. And the other ones, this one seems to be a lighter purple than these two. So I think what I'm going to try and do is maybe, I've never done helical knitting or switching skeins or whatever, but I'll try and figure out a way to make these look really cohesive. The next yarns that I want to show off, I have shown in a stash spotlight before. They are by Handful of Yarn, who is Annette, who I didn't even find her. She found me because I won a giveaway hosted by, I want to say CCM Yarns. And I had been nominated by some of my friends on Instagram to win a yarn bundle, and I won some yarn from Annette. It came with another skein that I have already used in a little scarf for a friend of mine, but these ones are definitely ones that I'm going to use for myself. I love the idea of using the 5 mini skeins with this greenish gray. These are from the second collection that she ever did, which was her Beyond the Trench collection. And all of the mini skeins have color names, but I don't remember what they were. These are all her sock base. 75-25 merino, superwash merino nylon. And this one, the colorway is Moon Moss, which I think is really, really well descriptive of it because it is gray like the moon and green like moss. I think it's so pretty. But I think there's all of the colors from the mini skeins in this one skein with some speckles. So I would like to use them together. And I would like to make the Shima shawl with these yarns. So I won these ones in a giveaway. But my next one that I'm going to share, I bought myself. This is her Epic DK base. And this one is the color Majora's Mask. And if you are not a video game person, that is a Legend of Zelda game. So she did a whole series this past year of colorways based on Legend of Zelda games, and I only bought Majora's Mask at the time. I do kind of wish I'd bought the Tears of the Kingdom colorway. Maybe I'll do that in the future. I don't think she's currently dyeing them anymore, but if she ever brought them back, I would love to get some of the Tears of the Kingdom yarn that she did. It was so pretty. I'm going to make a hat with this yarn. Not quite sure which one. My go-to is usually Jason's cashmere hat, but I feel like the colors are just too pretty and changeable to work with the cable, so maybe I'll just do a ribbed hat, something kind of simple and basic. The next yarns I want to share with you actually inspired a pattern roundup video. These are my Soothing Suri yarns from the Mindful Creators, who is Femme. Femme is based in the Netherlands, and I first found her through YouTube when she was also doing size inclusive pattern roundup videos, and since then she's gotten into yarn dyeing, and now she dyes her own yarn. This is one of her original colors that she started with, and I think she does still dye this colorway. It is Periwinkle Blue. So this one is 65-35 Suri alpaca and silk, but unlike most Suri yarns that usually have a low yardage, this one is 437 yards per 50 grams, so it's comparable to a skein of mohair. But it is the softness of Suri if you're really sensitive to mohair. And this one I actually got in an Oopsie sale that she did, and compared to the original Periwinkle Blue, I cannot tell how this is an Oopsie. But I got this one, I think, 25% off or something like that. It was quite a big discount. I was really excited about it. And I'm always nervous when I order yarns from other countries if I'm going to have to pay duty. I didn't have to pay duty from the Netherlands, so that was exciting. And with these yarns, I'm going to make the Zoja Wrap Cardigan by Veran Rose. I loved this pattern when Alex showed it off on her Instagram when she was looking for testers, but at the time that she was looking for testers, I was in the process of I had just gotten engaged and we were planning our wedding. I just didn't have the brain space to sign up for a test knit at the time. And I did think about making that pattern for my wedding, but I ultimately went with something a lot simpler just to keep things really easy for me because I was already under a bit of stress with planning the wedding. So when I have the time, I'm going to knit that pattern using these yarns, and I think it's going to be so pretty, almost Cinderella-like. This next yarn is one that I fell prey to simply by seeing the picture on Instagram, and I instantly bought it, and then I had to pay the price for it, literally. This is Teeny Button Studios, who is Robin. She is based out of New Orleans, and this is her DK weight base, soft DK, and this is the color Regency Blue from her Bridgerton collection. So this one, I think she did the collection originally right after the first season came out, and then I bought this one when she brought the collection back and added a few new colors when the second season came out. So this one is clearly the Daphne color. She had so many beautiful ones, and I would have gotten other colors, but I wanted to buy a sweater's quantity, and this is a sweater's quantity of DK for me. So I plan to make a cardigan with this. I think I've picked out the Whitmore cardigan for these. I think it would look really beautiful with a lace style cardigan, something that looks really feminine and delicate and dressy, Regency-esque, you know. But these were ones that when they arrived to me, I had to pay a pretty penny in duty charges because ordering stuff to Canada can be a bit of an issue, especially from the US. And it didn't used to be this way, but I find the more I order hand-dyed yarn from the States, the higher and higher the duty charges are getting. So I had to start limiting myself. I have another order coming soon that I pre-ordered back in June, and it might have arrived by the time this video came out. But I just know it's going to be a lot of duty, and I'm just feeling so anxious about it, but sometimes they're just so pretty I can't resist. And this was one of those times. So sometimes yarn is so pretty that I can't resist buying it. Other times I can't resist buying it because it's helping somebody out. Especially when that means the dyer is putting some yarn for sale. That's the case with these next yarns, which are from Ocean Fibers. And they are gorgeous. They are very similar in colorway to the Fly base from Hedgehog Fibers, which I talked about at the beginning of the video. But this is her sea glass color. I have it on her sock base and her mohair. I remember she was having a 25% off sale because I think it was last year, maybe the year, no, it was just last year. She was hospitalized and she couldn't work for a long time, so she was holding a yarn sale for all of her in-stock yarn to try and like garner a little income for herself and help pay her hospital bills. And that is why I bought this yarn. And at the time I thought, well, I don't know what I'm going to make with this yarn. I'm just going to buy everything in this color because these are gorgeous. I did also want to buy the mini set of all of the colors of the neon pastel rainbow she had, but that was sold out. So I only got the green, which is my favorite. And I do have an idea for this now. This is one of those cases where you buy the yarn not knowing what to make with it, and then sometimes the idea comes to you. Earlier this year, Victoria Merchant Knits was looking for testers for her upcoming Padstow cardigan. Not quite sure if it's out yet by the time this video goes live, but it is a cardigan that I just loved the look of. But I was honest with Victoria. I said, I would love to test knit this, but I really can't. I'm so busy right now. I don't have the time and mindset to dedicate to this pattern. And she very kindly gifted me the pattern anyway to be a beta tester, or to be a beta knitter, not tester. So I had hoped to get to this over the past summer, but stuff happened, stuff got in the way, I just wasn't able to do it. But I am going to be making a Padstow cardigan with this. I would dearly love to swatch with this soon. Maybe I've done that by the time this video comes out, hopefully, because I want to see, do I only need to hold one strand of fingering and one strand of mohair together, or should I hold two strands of mohair and two strands of fingering and one strand of mohair together? Because this is another open gauge style cardigan. It's similar in style, like yardage and gauge wise, to her Belfort sweater, which I absolutely love, and I do have plans to knit that one too, but you'll see that in another video. So I would love to make the Padstow cardigan with these yarns, and I will at some point. Maybe this year, maybe next year. And now we come to the dyer who I have the most light and bright colors from. And I have 3 quantities of yarn in one colorway by them. Let's see if you guessed right at the beginning of the video of who I have the most hand-dyed brightly colored yarn from. Was it the Scranton Stitcher? Because that's who I have the most yarn from in this particular collection of my stash. I love Katie Sue. She is a delight to follow. She's so sweet. She is someone that I found because she was sharing these really cool colorways on Instagram, and either somebody shared them or maybe I found them through my Discover feed. But the first colorway that I ever saw her show off was this one, which is her Groovy Kind of Love. It has to be one of the most fantastic purples I've ever seen. I just have to show off Groovy Kind of Love close up because it's such an incredible purple. It's just, it glows. It has this glowing aspect to it. I have no idea how she does this colorway, but isn't it just incredible? And I originally bought this yarn. I bought it in a couple types. Let me see if I can find them. They fell off the table next to me. But I do have 2 others of this. I got 4 skeins of it on mohair, and I got 5 skeins of it on fingering because my original plan was to make a Ghost Whisperer, but with my mohair held double for this. Still might do that, not quite sure. But I just love how this color just glows. Now, Katie Sue used it to make the Love Magic dress by Disco Stitch. And I admit, I definitely want to make a dress out of this yarn. I was toying with the idea of the ribbed to your measure dress. And I still might do that one. I'm just not quite sure. I might want to do something a little different. So still playing around with it, but that's the general idea right now. But definitely a dress out of this gorgeous purple yarn. And it's not the only purple yarn I have from her. This next colorway I have on a couple of different bases, and I have them in different sets for different projects, but I think I've grabbed all of the DK ones. This is her Hyacinth House colorway on DK, which is 100% superwash merino. And this one I'm going to use for an Isa cardigan by Veran Rose. I just love the bluey purple shade of this. It does look just like hyacinth flowers, and I just think they look beautiful. They'll be a really great colorway for a cardigan that I'll be able to wear with lots of different things. But this is one of my favorite colors by Katie Sue. It's not my absolute favorite. Groovy Kind of Love is my absolute favorite of hers, but I do also love Hyacinth House, and I've bought it for 2 other projects, so I'll share those with you too. At the same time that I bought the Hyacinth House on DK for an Isa cardigan, I also bought it on fingering weight to hold with a mohair that looks like this. And this one was a total surprise to me. This is her colorway Equesticles, which is from her Bob's Burgers collection, but I got this in her favorites collection. I'm not a Bob's Burgers fan. I've never watched the show. I did have to look up what Equesticles means, so I do know the story behind it now. But when Katie Sue was showing off her colorways for her favorites collection last year, she was doing color combos. And one of my favorite things about Katie Sue is that once she releases all of the colorways in her collection, she'll ask if you want to see color combos. And I forget if these were in the same post originally as like a variegated and a tonal together, or if they were in different posts and I just saw them next to each other, but I couldn't get it out of my head. So I asked to see these two together, and it was a light bulb moment. I just loved how they worked together, and I feel like having the Equesticles on the mohair is really going to give a beautiful tone over the Hyacinth House. And I'm using these to make an Evermore cardigan by Kadri. But let me just, I've already shown you the Hyacinth House close up, so let me show you the Equesticles, because it just has all of these gorgeous colors to it. There's green, there's pink, there's blue, there's purple, there's yellow. It's just so many different colors, and they blend so beautifully. I especially like this section right here. But I just think these are going to look so beautiful with that Hyacinth House. So last year, Katie Sue did a favorites collection. This year she did, I think it was called a Sweet Summer collection, and it was a lot of her past collections, like different colors from those past collections that all worked as like sweet summer colors. And the ones that I chose, they're from 3 different collections. Of course, I have more Hyacinth House, which is from her very first collection. And then I have yarn from her Fleetwood Mac collection. I don't remember the name of the collection, but it was all Fleetwood Mac songs. And then I have one from her Silly Love Songs collection. So the Hyacinth House I'm going to use with the 2 skeins from her Fleetwood Mac collection, which is called Dreams. And this one, obviously it's a song by Fleetwood Mac, but I just, again, same with the Equesticles, same idea. I could not get the idea of these 2 colors together, the variegated on the mohair and then the tonal on the fingering. And these ones are probably going to be, not quite sure if it'll be a sweater or a cardigan. I don't want to do a lento again, because my lento that I already have is almost the exact same colors as these. It's just like a fade of dark to light purple. But I think I might do like a Belfort by Victoria Marchant Knits. However, I have yarn set aside for that pattern as well. So this might also be a feather cardigan by the Knit Pro Girl. I have lots of options, but like I love that I have that in my back pocket, knowing that I can make a sweater or a cardigan out of 2 skeins of fingering weight yarn and 2 skeins of mohair held together on that large open gauge. It's not for everybody. I really love it because sometimes I overheat in my sweaters and I'm happy to have more of an open gauge sweater. So these ones I cannot wait to do together. The colors on Dreams, blues, pinks, purples, but they're so beautiful together and they just look cloud-like and they're very soft. I think they're such gorgeous colors. I will always buy from Katie Sue, even when I have to pay duty, because these are my most recent yarns added to my collection at time of recording, and I had to pay a lot of duty. I only bought 6 skeins of yarn this time. These are the first 4, and then I have 2 more to show you. But yeah, duty was pricey this time. But my last 2 from that order were these. These are Accidentally in Love from her Silly Love Songs collection, and she brought them back for the Sweet Summer collection. And I bought these because I wanted a bright pink that was not the deep neon pink. So not the color of Pinky Swear by Hedgehog Fibers. I wanted something softer, and this was exactly what I was looking for. And I'm going to use these to make a Tied and True cardigan by Starcross Knits, Tamara Jordan. And I'm going to do a short sleeve version with this. And I am doing this because I was totally influenced by somebody else's. One of her testers did a short sleeve version in a gorgeous hot pink like this, but it's a yarn that I don't think I can have access to. It's a European yarn, and I think it was just too tricky to find. But I knew that Katie Sue was doing this collection, and when I saw this color come back, I knew, okay, I'm buying that and I'm making the Tied and True cardigan. And 2 skeins is enough to make the short sleeve version. And now I come to my last hand-dyed light and bright yarn. I have saved possibly the best for last, not just because of the yarn and the color, but also because of the story behind it. This is, I have 4 skeins of it, but I'm just going to hold up the one. The Wandering Flock. Now, if you don't know The Wandering Flock, Geraldine is one of the most amazing yarn dyers. She creates these gorgeous neon pastel colors. She is the queen of neon pastel dyed yarn. And I love this colorway. This is Moonstone, and it just looks so gorgeous. It's one of my favorite colors that I've ever seen. I found her a couple of years ago when she was just on Etsy, but she now has her own website as well. But, the colorway is Moonrise. Sorry, it's Moonrise, not Moonstone. But this is her bulky weight, which is Superwash Extra Fine Merino, and it is 109 yards per 100 grams. And this color, it just had a hold on me that I could not shake, and I loved it so much. But her yarn is quite expensive. It's more expensive than some other hand-dyed yarns that I've bought, and that plus knowing the duty charges that I would have to pay just kind of always made me press pause whenever I wanted to buy this yarn. And I was always trying to think of what is the most cost-effective way to get some of this yarn. You know, I would love to have ordered it when my parents were down in Florida and they could bring it back for me, but Geraldine only releases a few colors at a time. She didn't always have Moonrise at the time that my parents were in Florida, so I couldn't take advantage of that. And then I thought nothing of it, and I think I said this in my first year of doing Vlogmas when I was opening an advent calendar every day, but I was doing it on a weekly basis, so I had like multiple days that I was opening within one video. One of the colorways of the minis that I opened was exactly like this, and I ended up using it in my Lento sweater. I think it's like the 2nd color, maybe the 3rd color. And I remember saying that, oh my gosh, this is one of my favorite colors in the Advent because this is the exact same color as that Wandering Flock color. And then I mentioned that my friend Cassandra, she was Knits with Nimbus, now she's Fiber and Leaves. She had knit a chunky souffle using this yarn. And I just said, oh my gosh, it reminds me of Cassandra's sweater. I love it so much. And then, was it a couple of weeks later, maybe it was a couple of months later, I get a message from Cassandra on Instagram, and she said, hey, what's your address? I want to send you a little gift. And it's like, oh, wow, okay, great, thanks. So I give her my address, and then this huge box arrives a couple of months later, or a couple of weeks later, and I notice on the description for customs, it says sweater plus yarn. And I am not kidding. I was freaking out. I opened the box right away and started to cry. And I'm probably going to cry right now too, because at the time that she sent it to me, I was kind of going through a rough spot in my life, and she gifted me her sweater and the yarn she had left over. Oh my gosh. First of all, Cassandra and I are the same size, so the sweater fit me perfectly. Second of all, this is a yarn color that I have been lusting after for a couple of years. Third of all, not only did she gift me a sweater, she gifted me the rest of the yarn so that I can still make something else with this yarn. But also, it was just so incredibly special because it's a sweater that is knit by one of my close friends, and I was so incredibly touched, especially because I had been going through this really rough patch, and I was just so grateful, and I'm getting teary about it now because I was just so shocked by her generosity, and it really gave me this huge amount of joy in a time that I was really going through a lot, and I will always be grateful to Cassandra for that. And I love when it gets chilly enough that I can pull out that sweater and put it on because it is so cozy. I love it so much. It's the Chunky Souffle is by Laura Penrose, who's one of my favorite designers too. So it's just perfect trifecta of all of these wonderful things. But I have the extra yarn. And what am I going to make with that, you ask? I am going to make Aubrey by Malabrigos. And this is, I think it's like partly a cowl, partly a vest. It's like a vest, but it ties on the sides. So like, even though it doesn't have a lot of sizes, I can make it fit me really well because I can just make those ties as loose or as tight as I would like them to be. And I have just enough yarn left over from Cassandra's sweater that I can make that cowl. And that's going to be so nice and cozy. I won't wear that with the sweater because the sweater has a nice high neckline, but like any other time I want to wear something really cozy in this colorway, I will have that as well. I just haven't made it yet, but it's definitely on the list. And that wraps up episode 2 of my stash tour. Hand-dyed yarns, lights and brights. If you're new here, thank you so much for watching, and if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. I really appreciate it. While you're here, it would help my channel if you would like this video, subscribe to my channel, and comment below which of these yarns was your favorite. I know I have a really big collection. It'd be wonderful to see what you liked amongst it. There are 3 more stash videos to come, so make sure you hit that bell icon to be notified when the next video goes live. I am hopeful that these will all release in a weekly schedule, but life can happen, so who knows. But I hope you all enjoyed seeing this tour through some of my hand-dyed yarns, and I hope you stick around to watch the other videos. Until then, take care and happy knitting!